I feel like this is an issue we've been talking about forever in the city of Detroit and frankly in America. You guys recently wrote an op-ed in the Detroit News that drew some attention again to this issue. I'm going to ask you to tell the viewers what inspired it and what point that you're trying to make. Karen, I'll start with you.
Well, the joint piece that Mark and I did was kind of spurred by our respective Facebook posts following a kind of a Twitter feed about a picture that was posted from Quicken about their incoming intern class for, I guess, this summer, and the lack of diversity in that picture. And so, you know, people were talking about it, and it turned not anything just specifically for Quicken, but just in general, because people are talking about diversity, you know, the lack of presence and participation of Black people and of people of color all around. And so Mark and I have been talking about it, and we decided to do a joint piece and not only talk about the problem, but also recommend, you know, a few suggestions, because people are looking like, okay, we want to do something. What do we do?
Yeah. Mark, your work is about opportunity, getting opportunity for people who typically are left out of it. Talk about sort of why we have this persistent problem with this in a city that is more than 80% African American.
That is the million-dollar question, because we've been talking about this for quite a while. And why in the city of Detroit, 80% African American, to your point, do we still have a significant gap? I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to is still getting the right people at the table. We have to get people at the table. And if we can get people at the table at the senior level positions, really get them engaged in strategic planning process, get them engaged in recruiting process, identify a strategy that's focused on getting into the community, getting the organizations involved, engaged in the community with the consumers at hand, so to speak, that will help this process. This will help this issue. Number two is the recruiting. I think we have a tendency of recruiting at these great institutions, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, but we also need to expand the talent base by recruiting at other types of institutions that are much more focused on diversity and inclusion as well, such as the HBCUs as an example.
Trina, this is not the first time that we've heard people level some criticism at Quicken Loans and the other companies that Dan Gilbert owns about diversity. Respond to the criticism of this photo, first of all, and the intern class, and then talk about some of the things that that you guys have been doing to try to address those criticisms.
Yes, no, I appreciate the platform, and I also appreciate the feedback. One is, you know, serving as the Chief Diversity Officer. I've been at the organization for 3.5 years, and it was our team members before I started that made the business case for 100% of someone's time, treasure, and effort to be focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I have to tip my hat to our team members to raising that up to our senior leadership team of the why. The second thing is, you know, throughout this journey that we've been on, this intentional journey, I would say, mistakes will happen. And I don't call this marketing intern, because I want to be clear, that wasn't reflective of our entire intern class. It was for the marketing team, and it was a true picture. It says to all of us that we have a lot of work still to do. And so in our intentional effort in this space, I can give you what we've been working on, but I also have to be very transparent that it's not going to flip its head overnight. And so, so holding our team members and our leaders accountable is really where we are. And how we've been able to do that have been a few things. One is in response to George Floyd's murder, we doubled down on our efforts around racial inequity. And really, it started inside out. Cleaning our own house is what we've been calling it. Starting first with our leaders and our senior most leaders, so that we can have introspective review of how we show up every day, decisions that we make, how we include in equity, inclusion, and diversity in every decision that we make. Challenging ourselves on, are we thinking about that, and how do we embed that in all of our decisions? Leveraging Dan's philosophy around the isms. Really, the one that resonates the most is we are the they, open doors, open mind, open culture, rooted in trust. And I can articulate that to you, but unless we're able to demonstrate that, those do just become words. So as we've created this strategy around racial inequity, our lens has been keenly focused on the following things: recruiting, leadership development, team member engagement, and government affairs. So the things that relate to homeownership, the things that relate to becoming a loan officer, and the requirements that are at a federal level, and how can we influence that. Our communication with law enforcement, engagement in that space, and then lastly, our communication with our team members. And so, you know, I don't have an excuse for you. I have what we are planning to do and how we are moving forward in that space. I think that to address specifically the marketing intern class, I think that we've unpacked a few things. One is we know that we need to be first accountable for the top of our funnel and where our talent leads coming from. Mark, you alluded to it, but we've been very intentional about our engagement with historically Black colleges and universities. We partnered with an organization called Home Free USA, which is the third largest home buying process. They're out of Maryland. They're 100% Black owned. And we've worked with them over the last 2 years to bring financial workshops to students at HBCUs. We started at Fisk University, and we've expanded that to 7 additional HBCUs. Building relationships with why is it important to have a healthy financial portfolio, whether it be working with Quicken Loans, or whether it be working with another organization. Coupling that with understanding the significance of home ownership. So we built this process in place with having workshops throughout the school year. And we recognize that a lot of students from DPSCD or in the city of Detroit go to HBCU. So of course, we need to have our efforts in that space. We also recognize that outside of Detroit, our brand wasn't really known. And so when we go to HBCUs, building up that brand recognition and understanding how we build relationships with students on campus was so important. So entrenching ourselves into the classroom with students and going in and having conversations about what it means to be in the mortgage business. People don't wake up and say, I want to be a loan officer. You know, that's not typical. So how do we get others to understand, Black students to understand the possibilities and the opportunities that are available in the home buying space? That's the first step. The second step is, once we get those students and we collect those resumes, how are we holding the hiring leaders accountable for that? And to be quite frank, you know, over the last 3.5 years, we haven't said that we're going to set metrics in place because honestly, we need to bring awareness and understanding the business imperative around why diverse perspectives are important to our bottom line. And I think that bringing awareness to the why first is so important. So we had to focus on inclusion. Why is inclusion so important? Yes, we're in the Blackest city in the state, in the United States of America, but we need to have people understand why that's so important to us and our bottom line here as it relates to our efforts in the city. And so that awareness is what we've been working on. And now we're at a point where we're holding our leaders accountable. But it's a process. And I think that, you know, through this process, we're going to make mistakes. We've clearly made them. And we're going to continue to hold ourselves accountable. We're not going to shy away from it. I called Karen right away. We talked about it. I'm here to talk about it on behalf of our organization and our CEO, Jay Farner, and our chairman, you know, Dan Gilbert, and our vice chairman, Bill Emerson. They're all in. But it's not going to change overnight. And what we're not going to do is just put people in positions just because. We're going to make sure that we are doing the right thing by making sure that we're, one, recognizing the talent that we have. And we know we have Black talent that is exceeding at our organization. How do we ensure that those opportunities for leadership are made available to them? Second is that we have to hold ourselves accountable to our hiring. And are we coming into our hiring with bias? Everybody has bias, right? So how do we recognize that bias and making those decisions so that moving forward, our intern classes are more inclusive? And that's really the bottom line. I don't mean to go on and on and on, but I want to set the record straight.
I think that's really, it's a really comprehensive answer. And so I want to ask Karen, you hear what Trina is saying, you hear what they're doing. What are we getting wrong? Why do we keep coming back to this issue? Why does it stay with us?
Well, I think because it's not about policy. It's not about policy. It's about personnel. It's about the personnel, and it's about practice. You know, I know Trina, and I responded after my original post and said I spoke to 3 people in leadership. You know, I'm comfortable with their response. I understand and respect their sincerity. But as long as it falls into the lap of a personal decision, that always circumvents policy. You know, I can have the most qualified person in front of me that is a Black person, but if I just don't feel comfortable or want to hire that Black person, I can find something legitimate, air quotes, that means that person isn't qualified. So yeah, the policy means I have to interview them, but my personal practice allows me to dismiss them and disqualify them and therefore exclude them. And therein lies the problem. We talked about this before, Stephen. It's not on paper, it's in our heart. And until people come to terms with their intrinsic biases and their closet prejudicial practices, none of this will change.
I couldn't agree with you more, which is
I
why
don't care
we're
what type
starting
of
to.
policy you have or what type of practice you have, but anywhere, you know, I mean, that's, you know, it's not to pick on them. They're a microcosm of almost every corporation around. It does not reflect what we'd like to see, and especially in a city that is predominantly African-American.
If I could just jump in very
Go
quickly,
ahead.
if I could, and there's this thing called implicit bias, and implicit bias is a challenge. We all have implicit bias, however you want to define it. And I think that, quite frankly, until we get to the root of the problem, it's not just another diversity and training program and to check the box that life goes on. It's really understanding that the empathy, the building of relationships, and making sure that your leaders throughout the organization understand the value of having a diverse team. It's been statistically proven. The Boston Consulting Group has indicated that you can achieve a 19% revenue increase if you have a diverse team. That's tying it to the bottom line. And until we understand that and get to the fundamental root problem, this issue will continue and will not change, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just want to address it. That's why I said it, we're turning the mirrors on ourselves, the decision makers. Over the last year and a half, we've had a book club with 100 of our leaders, senior leaders across the family of companies. Right now we're reading So You Want to Talk About Race. And this is not about a program for the underrepresented team members. This is not a program of what we need to do for those that continue to be, to your point, Karen, marginalized and left out. It really is the review of ourselves and how we are showing up. We have to unpack that first. And we have to talk about how people bring their experiences to decision making. And so that's so important for us to do. Again, and we're in this journey, we're on it together. And that's what I can tell you that we're working on.
And making sure that that environment where a person like Trina can speak up and that her voice is heard and respected. That's another thing. You got corporations that have voices, but they're seat holders. And so that doesn't work either. We also can't get by, have them read How to Make Friends with Black People. That's a good kind of tongue-in-cheek book in terms of what resonates with Black people. But we can't just put on a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and say, you know, and be afraid to speak to a Black person. Like, that doesn't match.
I want to thank all three of you for coming by, and hopefully we're nearing the point where we don't have to keep having these kind of discussions. Karen Dumas, Mark Lee, and Trina Scott, thank you for being here on American Black Girl.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Stephen.
Appreciate it.